Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry, and it's time for some more of the Adventures of Lone Wolf. We've finally found our way to the Temple of Ohrido, and I'm going to be starting pretty much where we left off because I've dozed on the sofa for about 5 hours and left it a bit late. Okay, here we go. It is late afternoon when you see the Temple of Ohrido rising majestically out of the swamp mists and tangled vegetation. The sight of this towering ziggurat is so breathtaking that you are both stunned into silence as you feast your eyes on its untarnished splendor. Tier upon tier of gleaming white stone, shaped and formed into perfect symmetry, confront you. Huge foundation slabs support a level carved of golden rock, inlaid and decorated with gemstones. Above that sit strata of precious metals and then levels made up of crystal slabs whose facets refract the colors of the rainbow. Upward climb tiers of ruby, sapphire, and emerald that offer up a wedge-shaped spire of pure collenium crystal to the sky. At its base, the swamp has shrunk back as if repelled by the radiant goodness of the temple. A perimeter of lush grass leads to a staircase of solid amber. You follow Pido as he ascends towards a pair of huge triangular doors set into the second level. Everywhere the glitter of gemstones and the gleam of precious metals radiate a purity unspoiled by the Danarg. Pido completes the complex procedures that open the great doors taught to him by the Elder Magi in preparation for this mission. They part, and you enter, stepping on a floor of glistening gold, a floor that has lain undisturbed for 7,000 years. The great doors close in a whisper. You follow Pido along a corridor of gleaming silvery metal that dazzles your eyes to a hall carved from solid crystal. Icicles of diamond hang from its ceiling and reflect in a floor set with mosaics of 1,000 shimmering spheres. This is definitely a place of sensory overload if you are easily affected by such. All of those shimmering, reflecting surfaces. Approach the crystal dais, Lone Wolf, instructs Pido, pointing to a radiant circular plateau of pure quartz. But even as his words leave his lips, you are already walking towards the plinth, drawn by a strange compulsion. You mount the dais, and a flood of golden light pours down from above, bathing you in its warm, cleansing rays. You raise your cupped hands as if offering up an invisible gift, and a tingling sensation runs the length of your arms and spreads through your body, giving you an incredible sense of well-being. A ball of sparkling light is taking shape in your hands. It condenses into a radiant crystal filled with golden fire. It is the Lorestone of Ohrido. Restore your current endurance score to its original level, which would imply that it's not all over yet and we haven't been instructed to add this to our inventory. The light fades and you step down from the dais, your senses aglow with a newfound wisdom and strength. Having witnessed the fulfillment of your quest, Pido beams with joy as you return to his side. He congratulates you and bids you follow as he turns towards an archway of silver set into the crystal walls of the chamber. Come, Lone Wolf, we have a long journey ahead of us. We must leave without delay. The thought of returning to the dangers of the Danarg fills you with dread. Pido senses your anxiety. Don't look so dismayed, he says, still smiling. This temple will provide the means for our safe return. You will see. Intrigued by his answer, you follow in silence as he leads you through the archway and up a long flight of marble stairs to another chamber, also constructed of crystal but veined with a marble that glistens like liquid fire. It is solid collenium. At the centre of the chamber, its hull resting on a cradle of steel, is a levitron, an ancient sky ship, like the one Barnadon had, presumably. Like everything else that you have seen in this wondrous temple, the craft is untarnished by time. Pydo ushers you aboard and prepares to power the craft. A shudder runs through the hull as the engines rise in pitch, and slowly it lifts from its bed of steel. The chamber is built in the spire of the temple, and the roof now slides open to allow the levitron to rise into the darkening sky above the Danarg. Pydo sets the controls and sets the ship's starguider on a course for Elzian. Then he joins you at the bow rail for one last look at the Temple of Ohrido. It glows red in the light of the setting sun, but the shimmering glow is blemished by shadows that swoop back and forth across its tiers. You assume it is just a trick of the twilight until your ears are filled by a sudden and terrifying shriek. I imagine Kran riders or Zlan beast riders may be responsible. You look up to see a squadron of black-winged Kran swooping down on the levitron. On the backs of these leathery creatures ride red-robed Vordaks, hideous servants of the Darklords of Helgedad. In their skeletal hands they wield staves of black iron which crackle with blue fire. As a Kran screams past, a stream of liquid blue fire pours from its rider's staff, but we do possess the somersault. You deflect the stream of liquid fire with the edge of your golden blade, sending it raining down into the Danarg. Two more Kran swoop in and hover above the prow. Their riders leap onto the deck and begin attacking part of the superstructure. "Stop them!" screams Pydo, drawing his sword. "Stop them or we're doomed!" You leap from the bow and run across the main deck, your sword raised to strike. There are two Vordaks with separate stats. You must fight these creatures one at a time. They are immune to Mind Blast but not Psi Surge. Unless you possess the Magnakai discipline of Psi Screen, reduce your combat skill by 2 points for the duration of this combat. We're okay on that front. These creatures are undead. Remember to double all endurance point losses they sustain due to the power of the somersault. Okay. So. Both are in the plus 11 column or more. Meaning 28 and 26. Meaning this should be some fairly brief combat. We charge up at the first one, and with a mere 3, we suffer 2 points of damage and deal 22, reducing him to a mere 6 endurance, and that 2 damage will heal fairly quickly if non-combat events occur during the fight. Second round of combat, a 5. We suffer 1 point of damage and dispatch our foe. Probably hurling his body overside with the power of our sword. Second individual. Can we get higher than a 5? No, we roll a 4. We take 2 more points of damage. Okay. So 3, we took 2. Down to 26. 1 down to 25. 1 down to 24. There we go. So with a 4, that is 24 damage on 26. And to deal those last 2 points of damage, a 10. Enemy slain outright, lone wolf suffers no damage whatsoever. So that was 4 rounds of combat in case it matters. Suddenly, more shrieking Vordaks crush down on the deck. Pydo is immediately engulfed by the red-robed figures. He is outnumbered, but he fights with a tiger-like tenacity, his blue-bladed sword tearing deep into their loathsome bodies. You are running back across the main deck when a new danger confronts you. A Kran swoops low across the skyship, dropping a cluster of black crystal cubes that scatter across the deck and allow us to restore a point of endurance, as this is technically a non-combat section. We do indeed possess the high discipline of divination, and we have reached the highest possible rank available at this point in the storyline. Your psychic skill detects that each of the black crystal cubes is vibrating, and what is more, the vibrations are building up to an explosive intensity. Should even one tiny fragment of a crystal puncture the Levitron's pressure tank, the liquid gas stored inside will ignite and the skyship will be torn to pieces with resulting explosion, and we get another point back to 26. Clearly, look, they're giving the impression Pydo's in great danger, but we need to get these off the ship right now. We'll gather up the crystal cubes and throw them overboard. Frantically, you scramble across the deck, collecting and hurling away the cubes as you go. Each cube is vibrating with an energy that is set to rip it apart, and as you cast the last one over the side, you see the others, many of them exploding with dull booms in the swamp far below, and go back up to 27 endurance points. Pydo screams for your help. A swooping Kran rider has cast a large net, smothering his body. Oh, is he going to be captured with a bunch of the Vordaks? The net is sewn with hundreds of tiny barbed hooks which have worked their way into his skin and clothes, and he cannot free himself without the hooks inflicting fearful wounds. Only one Vordak remains to confront him, all the others having perished on his blade, but he is now unable to defend himself against this creature. He is at the mercy of a merciless foe. You scramble to your feet and rush to save him as the Vordak creeps closer. Suddenly, the Kran rider reappears, gliding low across the deck before hovering over the bow. A length of thin black rope dangles from its saddle, and hurriedly the Vordak threads it through the corners of the net. You race up the steps shouting, "For Sommerlund!" and launch your attack. The Vordak turns to face you, its skeletal features frozen in a mask of terror. An instant later, your weapon shears its bony neck and sends its skull-like head spinning down into the Danarg. A ghastly cry pierces your ears, but it is not a shriek of pain or despair. It is a malicious caw of triumph. The Kran beats its massive wings, and the downdraft forces you to your knees as the creature climbs higher into the darkening sky. You stare aghast as the rope closes the net around Pydo and lifts him off the deck. Instinctively, you leap upwards, your hands outstretched to grab the barbed net, but it is too late. The Kran turns in mid-air and flies off to the north, with Pydo, wounded and helpless, swinging like a netted fish below its leathery black belly. And that does put us back up to full health. But we also go to section 350, so it doesn't truly matter at this point in the adventure. How are we going to land the skyship? Will the mages be able to do it for us? Remotely. Anger and frustration well up inside you as helplessly you watch the Kran and your captured companion, disappear beyond the horizon. Gradually your anger gives way to sadness as you ponder his fate and wonder if he will ever survive this cruel abduction. You pray for his safety, calling on the spirits of your ancestors to watch over and protect him, and, as if in answer to your prayer, you feel a sudden calm engulf your senses. The power of the Lorestone transfused into your being the instant it appeared in your hands has greatly increased your intellect and awareness. With confidence, you know that Pydo will survive his ordeal, and that one day you will meet and fight again side by side. The return voyage to Dessi is a swift but lonely journey. The Star Guider ensures that the Levitron stays on course for Elzian, and as you cross the canal which encircles the city, a pilot skyship arrives to escort you down. During the voyage you have discovered how to control the Levitron, and now, as slowly you approach the landing platform of the Tower of Truth, you disengage the Star Guider and make a faultless landing. Lord Rimoah and the High Council have gathered to greet your return, and upon hearing of your successful quest their hopes for the future are renewed, in spite of the sad news of Lord Pydo's capture by agents of the Darklords. The High Council listens avidly as you recall your treacherous journey through Telestria, the perilous trek across the Danarg, and the wondrous discovery of their lost temple. When finally you have completed your account, they applaud and pay tribute to your courage and daring, their faces beaming with pride. But despite their joyous greeting, you sense that something is wrong. They seem distant, as if their minds were preoccupied with the solving of a difficult and perplexing problem. You ask Lord Rimoah if all is well, and he replies, "You have grown in perception, Lone Wolf. Many things have occurred since last we spoke, and although your quest for the Lorestone of Ohrido has succeeded, the peril of our age has grown even more deadly. The Darklords now wage open war throughout Magnamund, and many lands have fallen before their Gaiac legions. Telestria has been overrun. So too have the Stormland nations. Sommerland stands firm against the armies of Darklord Nag, but she has lost her southern province of Ruanon. This shocking news fills you with an urge to return to your homeland, yet to do so would defeat the Magnakai quest. Lord Rimoah bids you follow him to the chamber of the High Council. Set into the floor is a circular well brimming with a silvery liquid metal. Rimoah kneels and touches the surface, and slowly a vision takes form within the shimmering depths of the pool. It is a fortified city surrounded by rolling hills. "You look upon the city of Tahu in the land of Anari," says Rimoah, his voice now solemn and composed. "The Lorestone you must find next lies deep below its streets in an ancient city that was built during the dawn of Magnamund. The vision of Tahu heralds the start of a new and perilous episode in your quest for the Magnakai. If you possess the bravery and courage of a true Kai Master, the challenge of Tahu awaits you in Book 9 of the Lone Wolf series, entitled The Cauldron of Fear." And indeed, that is the book we shall be playing next. Now, that was a bit shorter than expected, but hey, mission accomplished, I suppose. When we get to Book 9, it is the first book that is not illustrated by Gary Chalk, but rather by Brian Williams. And if we just look at a few of the pictures now, I'm just going to pick some random numbers, you will notice that the art style looks decidedly different. There's a more sort of, I'd almost call it realistic sense to proportions and shape and form, and less of a impressionistic, exaggerated, fantastical style. However, it also appears rather more modern, in that Gary's artwork looked like something medieval, something historical and fantastical, whereas if I can find, there's some pictures, like the Gaiacs look very regular in their appearance. They don't have that distinctive chaotic uniqueness to them. And many of the characters look like something you'd see in a children's history book. But there's a uniform appearance quite often. Like these two guards, for example, they look almost exactly like something you'd see in a classic historical film, not a recent historical film where they don't give a toss and mess everything up, but again, very uniform like the Gaiacs. Whereas Gary's artwork had a more unique, characterful approach to it, and this is more sort of cold and almost scientific feeling. I'm not going to go into the reason why there are two different artists, except to say that from my understanding, after Book 8, or during writing of Book 8, Gary and Joe had a falling out over exactly who had created how much of Lone Wolf and Magnamund, with Gary saying that his artwork had created so much of it that he might as well, and they'd had conversations back and forth, obviously. Joe would have said, "Hey, can you draw me a picture of this?" and Gary would have said, "Oh yeah, cool. Can I do this in the picture?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure." So there, there was an element of collaboration, and then there was a disagreement about exactly who had created how much, and the split of the money. Bear in mind that Joe had also had fallings out over the amount he was being paid with publishers on one or two previous occasions. One with Games Workshop, where he decided to not go down the fighting fantasy route, but instead go publish the books separately with Beaver Books, I think. And then later on, there was something similar. After this, mind you, possibly for Mongoose Mega Deal, my god, that was cursed, or something else. Now, the interesting thing about my playthrough of Book 9 will be that it is the last of the game book series that I have previously played. I did, at some point, eventually purchase books 10, 11, and 12 at considerable difficulty when they were out of print and you had to go looking for second-hand copies. But I never played them. And then the Lone Wolf Mega Deal got announced from Mongoose Publishing, and they were going to publish all 32 of the Lone Wolf series, including books 29 to 32, which had not been written yet, which are now being published by not Manticore Verlag, because it went on to the other one, Magnamund Publishing or something. Oh no, it's named after the capital of Sommerland, isn't it? Hang on. Lone Wolf L. Holmgard Publishing, that's it. Right. So yeah, the Mongoose Mega Deal was going to publish all 32 game books and 6 novels, 2 trilogies of 3 each. What did they manage? They managed, so that would go up to 38 books. They managed, I believe, the first 18 books, some of which they had to reprint multiple times because of errors. They had to reprint book 3 or 4 like 3 or 4 times. It was that bad. And of course book 3 was unplayable because the completely unavoidable section asking if you had the evil crystal that would kill you, which could not be avoided, was missing, because for the first print and the first reprint, it was hiding underneath a piece of filler art someone had put on the page and covered up the section completely by mistake. Oh, goodness. Yeah. So they managed the first 18 books and 1 book from each of the 2 trilogies. One about the Amazons of... I can't remember where it was called. And the other one about the Drakarim invading a country with a bunch of Boris dwarven gunships that were like, First World War or Second World War gunboats that could bombard cities from offshore. The dwarves weren't working in collaboration with the Drakarim. They had been captured and tortured and forced to build the guns, whereas the Drakarim had built the ships themselves. And there was a group of young Kai monks, and Joe had apparently collaborated in the writing of that one. A group of young Kai monks went into a battle situation and faced off against the Drakarim warlord, who was just ridiculously, unbelievably immune to damage. and murdered 3 of them, leaving the rebellious young Kai Lord, who was rubbish, as opposed to the other 2 young Kai monks who were better than him, and their superior, who was better than all of them, leaving him to escape and get rescued by a few dwarves at the end, who's like, hey, do you want to get in our boat now? Let's take you away, and we'll come back and there'll be a book 2 and book 3 of this trilogy, which never happened. Yeah, I know. Never happened, unfortunately. So they got those 19 or 20 books out, and then they stopped. And they said, look guys, we can't continue for Mega Deal. And if you'd like to ask for refunds, you're welcome to get in touch and we'll sort them out. Yeah, 3 or 4 people managed to get a refund. Everyone else got ignored. I, rather kindly, wrote in and said, hey, look, you've delivered about half the books. How about only half a refund? And they never replied, the bastards. And I haven't bought a single thing from Mongoose Publishing ever since. So then the books got picked up by Manticore Verlag, a German printer who was excited about printing them in German and English. They printed, I think, 2 or 3 or 4 books and then stopped. Well, new books, that is, you know. They printed like a few new books and stopped. And then, fortunately, everything went to Holmgard Publishing, who've been doing a pretty good job. And I haven't actually... Holmgard Publishing are supposed to do the Lone Wolf Miniatures game, which I've been looking forward to for quite some time. I did get to see some of the miniatures at Fighting Fantasy Fest a few years ago, and it all looked pretty nice. It looked like they were playing on a hex grid, and obviously it was a prototype. It had been on hold for quite some time because the guy who was working on the game had some real life trouble come up, so I can't remember if it was like, you know, someone in the family catching a horrible disease and needing to be looked after for a long time, or something equally massively disruptive, so he just wasn't able to work on it for a while. And then when the new board game got announced, that does have miniatures, and it has some of the same sculpts. But that's more like a worker placement world domination game, where the Dark Lords and the forces of the good countries are fighting it out for control of the world as the Dark Lords try to invade everything and are very powerful. And Lone Wolf is off on the side of the board, on a little sideboard, doing his quests, playing through the series, trying to do 1 book a turn. And apparently Lone Wolf has a mechanic where he can attempt to complete 2 books in 1 turn, but has a risk of injury which causes him to sit out the next turn if he messes it up. And as he completes the books in the series, he becomes more powerful and more of a threat to the Dark Lords. And some of the miniatures are smaller than usual size, so you wouldn't be able to use them in a lot of other games. But I backed that one anyway, in the hope that, because the plan is now that they will do the miniature game sometime after, and the miniature game is supposed to be fighting small skirmish encounters from the series itself. You know, particular favourite scenes, like, you know, the battle with the Gorgas on the bridge, or other stuff like that, for example. So set pieces with specific characters, presumably, or there'll be like a points value in specific forces. Now, it is nice to know that in the last few years of Joe's life, Joe and Gary managed to make peace, and, you know, there was good friendship between them again, and things started to work out well. Interestingly, for some reason, Gary Chalk got to do illustrations for French editions of a lot of Lone Wolf stuff in the years when he wasn't working on the rest of Lone Wolf stuff. So a lot of French Lone Wolf books and fan stuff all have his artwork all over them, which is interesting. It's a real shame. I almost got to meet him at a different Fighting Fantasy Fest a few years earlier. And I was very excited to meet Gary Chalk at last for, all his Lone Wolf artwork and all the artwork he did for Games Workshop back in the day. But sadly, he wasn't able to come due to what was described as an emergency dental appointment. So none of us got to see him there that day, and that's a real shame. Now, there will be a new Fighting Fantasy Fest this year. I will see if I can attend, but I'll have to check if I can get someone to look after my father for the day while I go, because I'm not sure how his health will be at the time, and it has been a bit delicate lately. I've been looking after him for the last, something like 3 or 4 years now, it is what it is. So I don't get out quite as much as I used to. Anyway, that about wraps it up for this book, and we will be going into book 9, the last blind playthrough. Now, I believe I only played book 9 ever before I got hold of a copy of book 2. I might have played it once after I got hold of a copy of book 2, so I am used to completing this book without the Summersword. Also, I haven't played it for about, 30 years, so I'm not going to remember too much, apart from some of the pictures, the ghoul attacking in the night while you sleep and things like that. Barnadon appears in this book, I remember that. There's a maze underneath the city. The evil army attacks the city. It's possible to die to an auto-kill on the wall from that stone thrower that we saw in one of the illustrations. And I think that one is a pure dice roll. And it's possible to use a magic item to defeat the evil warlord at the end of the book without a fight. Although apparently if you have a Summersword, you can't use that item and have to go straight to combat against his very high combat stats. So I might actually play book 9 without the Summersword, because, of course, over the years I've heard that if you go into book 11 with a Summersword, you get auto-killed because the Darklords realise, they sense your location because it's like such an obvious, holy good power. They know where it is immediately and like nuke you with a big lightning bolt from a distance or something before you even get close. So maybe I do book 9 without the Summersword as practice, because it has obviously trivialized normal combat throughout the series. And it would be good to practice adventuring without it again. Although the curing discipline is going to help significantly in that regard. So I haven't decided yet if I'll take the Summersword with me or not into book 9, but we shall see. In the meantime, though, I'm going to end the episode here. I hope you've all enjoyed this one, and I'll look forward to seeing you all in the very next one. I'll say goodbye for now, though, and cheerio, everyone. See you all soon. Oh, and of course, don't forget, for Sommerlund and the Kai.